Judged before she could fly, sometimes the greatest turbulence doesn't come from the sky, it comes from the ground before the engines even start. This is a story of assumption, prejudice, and quiet power, where a woman was underestimated not by strangers, but by the very people who would soon depend on her skill, judgment, and leadership at 35,000 feet. In a world where uniforms often determine respect and skin color still shapes perception, one seasoned pilot chose to arrive without fanfare, no stripes, no announcement, just her presence. She didn't come to defend herself, she came to observe. And that's where this flight truly began. A quiet arrival with hidden wings, the soft hum of the airport echoed through Gate B42 as passengers hurried past, dragging suitcases and sipping overpriced coffee. Among the crowd, a tall black woman in jeans, sneakers, and a navy hoodie moved with calm purpose. No flashy uniform, no badge on display, just quiet confidence in her step. This was Angela Rivers, though no one around her knew it. She stood near the window, gazing at the plane she'd soon command, blending in like any other traveler. Angela wasn't here just to fly, she was here to observe. Today's flight crew didn't know they were being evaluated. She wanted authenticity, unfiltered behavior. For years, she'd flown across continents, trained top-tier pilots, and carried the weight of leadership on her shoulders. But today, she arrived as a mystery to those who only saw skin, not stripes. And that mystery would soon reveal more about them than about her. Laughter laced with prejudice as the crew approached, dressed crisply in navy uniforms with golden epaulets gleaming. Their laughter was loud, carefree, until they spotted Angela. The shift was subtle but sharp. One of the flight attendants, a slim blonde woman with pursed lips, glanced at Angela and smirked. Lost, maybe. She whispered to her colleague, "Or here to ask about a refund." They giggled, but their laughter held a sting. The co-pilot leaned in, not even trying to lower his voice, probably just waiting for help, or a handout. They chuckled again, amused at their own ignorance. Angela stood silent, back still turned, but her ears caught every syllable. She didn't need to correct them, not yet. Their arrogance was unfolding perfectly. She took another slow sip of her coffee, letting their words hang in the air like smoke. They saw a black woman in casual clothes. They didn't see the pilot who had more logged hours than any of them combined. They didn't see the storm they were about to fly into. And that's exactly how Angela wanted it. Silence that speaks louder than words. Angela stood still, watching the gate monitors flicker as passengers lined up for boarding. The voices behind her grew fainter as the flight crew moved past, still snickering. But she made no move to respond, no dramatic reveal, just quiet observation. Years in aviation had taught her that true control wasn't always in speaking, but in watching. She had learned to let people expose themselves before stepping into command. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Every tone, every word, every look was being mentally recorded. She knew this crew was about to enter an unscheduled performance review, and they had no idea who their audience truly was. It was almost poetic. The calm in Angela's demeanor masked the storm of professionalism within. She wasn't angry, she was focused. This wasn't the first time she'd been underestimated, and it wouldn't be the last. But this time she was here with authority, and soon they'd realize just who they had judged so carelessly. The unmasking at Gate B42, the gate agent, Carla, walked briskly over, scanning the crowd until her eyes lit up. "Captain Rivers," she greeted warmly, her voice carrying just enough volume to catch the attention of the crew standing nearby. "We're ready for pre-boarding. Would you like to step on first?" The reaction was instant. Heads snapped, the blonde attendant blinked, clearly confused. The co-pilot's smug smile dropped like landing gear. "Wait, Captain?" he asked, his voice laced with disbelief. Angela turned slowly, unzipping her hoodie just enough to reveal the silver Airline badge clipped to her chest. Below it, her name, Captain Angela Rivers, Senior Lead Pilot. "I believe I'm flying this aircraft today," she said, her tone calm but commanding, "and I'll also be evaluating this crew." The silence was delicious. Their laughter had vanished. No one was giggling now. Angela gave a polite nod to Carla and proceeded toward the jet bridge, leaving the stunned crew in her wake. Their judgment had arrived before her uniform did, and now they were the ones being checked in. Shockwaves in the jet bridge. The walk from the gate to the aircraft had never felt longer for the crew. They trailed behind Angela in a stunned silence, their confident strides now replaced with stiff, uneasy steps. The blonde flight attendant, who just minutes ago had laughed at her, kept her eyes low. The co-pilot was fidgeting, trying to mask his nerves beneath a forced smile. Angela didn't need to look back. She could feel their discomfort. It pulsed in the tight air around them, thicker than turbulence. Once inside the aircraft, she set her bag in the cockpit and began powering on systems with swift precision. The co-pilot slid into the right seat beside her, noticeably quieter than before. "Everything okay?" she asked without looking up, voice smooth and measured. "Why, yes, Captain," he stammered, now painfully aware of who sat in command. Their reality had changed in a blink. The woman they mocked moments ago now held their entire flight and reputation in her capable hands. A silent test at 35,000 feet. Once airborne, the cabin hummed with routine activity, but for the crew, nothing felt ordinary. Angela was not only flying, she was watching. Every announcement, every interaction, every procedure was being noted. The co-pilot flubbed a checklist item, and Angela calmly corrected him, her tone professional but laced with quiet authority. In the galley, the attendants overcompensated with exaggerated courtesy toward passengers, hoping to repair an impression that was already burned into Angela's memory. She watched as they served drinks, observed how they handled a passenger complaint, and made mental notes on teamwork, communication, and yes, attitude. She wasn't there to punish. She was there to expose the gap between surface politeness and true professionalism. For them, it was a routine flight. For Angela, it was a high-altitude examination. They had underestimated her on the ground. Now they were under evaluation in the sky. Eyes that missed nothing from her seat in the cockpit to her quiet walks through the cabin, Captain Angela Rivers was observing everything, not just procedures, but people. Her sharp eyes noted the subtle cues. How the blonde attendant only smiled when passengers were looking, how the purser whispered commands instead of collaborating, how tension crept into the co-pilot's hands during turbulence. Angela didn't need to take physical notes. Her mind was a black box recorder, tracking every behavior with precision. She watched how delays were handled, how crew members interacted with each other under pressure, and most of all, how quickly people changed once they realized who she was. Professionalism, she knew, isn't tested when things are easy. It's proven when things are uncomfortable, and for this crew, nothing had been more uncomfortable than their own assumptions unraveling midair. They thought the flight would be routine, but for Angela, this was the final layer of truth. The test behind the smiles, the voice over the clouds as the flight neared descent. Angela reached for the intercom. Her voice, smooth as jet engines and sharp as wing edges, filled the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're beginning our descent into Chicago, and I hope your journey has been comfortable." A pause. She continued, her tone warm, but unmistakably pointed. "You may not have realized, but today's flight was also a quiet reminder that leadership doesn't always arrive in a uniform. Sometimes it walks beside you silently, listens to your laughter, and waits for the right moment to speak." The cabin fell still. Passengers looked up. Crew members froze. "Thank you for flying with us, and thank you for showing your true altitude, not just at 35,000 feet, but where it truly matters, on the ground." She clicked off the mic. No turbulence, no alarms, just silence thick with realization. Angela leaned back in her seat, eyes forward. The hardest flight was over. The landing would be smooth, but the lesson would land even harder. Grounded truths in the debrief room. In a quiet debrief room tucked behind the bustling terminals of O'Hare, the flight crew sat in uneasy silence. Angela entered with a folder in hand, her stride composed, her expression unreadable. The same people who had laughed so freely earlier now avoided her gaze. She placed the folder on the table and spoke without raising her voice. "This flight was more than a trip from Atlanta to Chicago," she began. It was a test not of flying ability, but of character. She looked at each one of them, not with anger, but with command. You judged before you knew, you assumed before you asked, and you spoke in a way that revealed more about your professionalism than any checklist ever could. The co-pilot's face flushed. The attendants sat stiffly, their earlier arrogance long gone. Angela continued, "You saw a black woman in casual clothes and forgot that leadership doesn't always wear a name tag. But I wear experience, responsibility, and respect, even when you don't recognize it." The final flight path respect earned as Angela stepped back into the terminal. The tension of the flight melted into the steady rhythm of airport life. Travelers bustled by, oblivious to the lesson just lived behind closed doors. A young ground crew member, recognizing her, offered a discreet nod of admiration. She returned it with a slight smile. Angela didn't need applause. Her dignity was her landing gear. Steady, strong, and always ready for the next takeoff. What mattered most wasn't proving her worth. It was allowing those who underestimated her to confront their own blind spots. Today wasn't about revenge. It was about revelation, because true authority doesn't yell. It doesn't need a stage. It simply shows up, does the job, and leaves the room better than it was found. As she walked toward her next gate, flight bag slung over her shoulder, she didn't look back. She didn't have to. Respect had already taken off, and this time everyone saw who was truly flying the plane. Her wings were never in question. Angela Rivers didn't need to shout. She didn't need to prove anything. The weight of her experience, calm authority, and surgical precision had already rewritten every assumption made before takeoff. This wasn't just a flight. It was a transformation, not of altitude, but of attitude. The crew had laughed, they had judged, and in return, they were shown who really had the flight plan in her hands. As Angela disappeared into the stream of travelers, she left behind no bitterness, only a lasting imprint of humility and leadership. She had reminded everyone in her orbit that true power moves quietly and lands loudly. Her lesson: never judge who's in control by how they enter the room, because sometimes the woman you mock at the gate is the one flying the plane.